It's 2019, and my New Year's resolution is to stop doing silly intros on podcasts.
This is Partners in Crime with Adam Croft and Robert Dawes.
In all seriousness, Bob, I'm actually running out of things to say in those introductions.
Well, you don't seem to be. You seem to be a sort of a bottomless well of wonderful, little, pithy, humorous
Most of them sound like they've come out of my bottom, yeah.
Well, Happy New Year on that note.
Happy New Year to you too.
How are you feeling, all right?
Yeah, not too bad, actually. Yeah, a bit of a late night on New Year's Eve, as one might expect.
Yes.
But, slowly recovering now. Yes. It does get much more difficult.
Yeah, we had a very jolly time. I can remember dancing with my 82-year-old mother at 2 o'clock in the morning, 2 hours into the new year. So it was quite jolly. But last week's podcast, I had a thumping big headache, which I didn't own up to because I didn't think that was very professional. But anyway, I'm feeling a lot better today.
Well, yeah. Are you doing dry January or something like that? Or...
Yes, I'm doing dry white wine January.
Yes. Dry sherry.
Yeah, dry sherry or whatever. I know. No. Really, I mean, I think it's a wonderful thing, and I'm certainly not going to have much. I mean, as you know, I'm a very light alcohol imbiber,
light alcoholic.
But I think the real challenge is to do a dry December. Really, I mean, that would be a challenge for everyone, wouldn't it?
Well, you've got 11 months to psych yourself up for it.
Yes, mind you, I just think 2018, for so many people I know, was so miserable for so many different reasons.
We needed drink to get us through it, didn't we?
We needed the festivity. I mean, that's not what Christmas is about, as we know, but it's part of it these days. So it's family, friends, loved ones, and having a good time, and feeling a little more secure in these strange, wayward years.
Well, I like to think maybe we lightened the tone slightly for the year.
Yes, well, I'd like to think that. I don't know if we do. But anyway, that is one of our ambitions.
We have to get something out of it because we're not getting paid.
No.
Anyway.
Yeah. Back to crime.
Well, talking about the podcast,
Partners in Banter, we're renaming this.
Well, we were scheduling our live episode, weren't we, just before we came on air, deciding when we're going to do our first birthday live episode, which is going to be in a couple of weeks' time. Yes. I think the episode after next will be a live one. We'll announce details on next week's show. But I did spend a portion of the week over Christmas testing the software we're going to be using for broadcasting live. Now, this is no small thing. It's not just a case of, hitting a different button and doing it live instead of doing it pre-recorded, because there are things like, for example, little things like normally we put the theme tune on the beginning and the end after we finish recording. We don't sit there and listen through it. It's that bit's done afterwards. But other than that, everything is done as live. But there's little things like the actual editing, the production, the direction of it is done separately. And this bit of software that I found to essentially have a podcast being presented and put out there live on YouTube and Facebook, as it will be, in video form, it's quite complicated because it's kind of like a digital editing suite. You know, when you see sort of backstage at TV stations where they've got directors and producers, big bank of monitors and things, and they're cutting between different camera angles and shots and seeing what's coming up next. It's all that going on.
Well, in this second bedroom?
In this second bedroom, yes, all on this screen. It's all digital on the screen. I was having a play around with it, so you can run the titles, and you can go to the camera and you can flick camera shots to a different shot. You can bring in footage from elsewhere. All of these things. It's very, very. It's brilliant. It's. Directing and producing a video project live on the fly is quite daunting anyway. But while you're actually presenting this show at the same time and doing it for the first time,
it's doubly challenging to the little guy.
It's going to be quite a challenge.
Yeah, well, you're up to it, and if anyone can do it, it's you. But I think it's very exciting, and the very fact that we can do this. I mean, all I need to know is, will Mr. Dawes be getting his close-ups?
Oh no, there'll be some very clever camera trickery going on there. Yeah, we can't do it in HD for obvious reasons.
Will I get my special gauze? It takes 15 years off of me. That's all I'm interested in.
We'll get makeup in.
Going live, you see, listeners, it's going to be a whole different sort of thing, because my rider is, of course, it has increased to include a Winnebago and personal wardrobe and makeup artists.
He's got a caravan on my drive.
Yeah. I've got a one berth tent in his back garden.
Well, I was testing it the other day, and I was playing around and fiddling with it, and I didn't realise. I thought I hadn't hit the button to actually broadcast. Turns out that for about 35-40 minutes, I was actually broadcasting live on the Partners in Crime YouTube channel. Fortunately, only 5 people saw it. But for those 5 minutes, they will have seen me sitting there staring at my computer, probably scratching my nose, swearing at it, trying to work out why I couldn't get it working properly.
Well, the imagination leaps at the response to. I mean, it's a very dangerous thing, isn't it?
Well, we did get one comment, I think, from David Lum, who said something along the lines of, it's very exciting to have a live episode, but there's not a whole lot going on. It's just me sitting there, scratching my head in front of the computer, nipping off to get a cup of tea every now and again. It's a good job that's all I was doing, really.
Well, yes, I mean, God, I find that terrifying.
It was nearly an hour before I noticed it had happened.
It's like one of those Black Mirrors where you're suddenly being looked at through the camera of your laptop, and your every move being followed.
I was just broadcasting myself across the internet. I say, fortunately, only 5 people saw it, and I have since deleted the video, so you can now give up on your search for those of you who are currently desperately trying to find it as you're listening to this.
Only one of them sued, listeners. Scarred for life.
I didn't actually look through. I didn't do anything nefarious, but I thought, I'll just delete that.
Well, when we go live, it'll be the whole singing and dancing. It'll be the Andy Williams show,
and it'll be planned.
It'll be full chorus of choir and singing and
dancing girls in the background.
Yes, it will. It'll be. We're pulling out all the stops. But you can actually do that in the imagination. In real life, it's just going to be us two sitting here, occasionally glancing up.
Yeah. And I think that may be one of the mistakes we made going to video in the first place, is that people can actually see what this ramshackle setup looks like now. Yes. It might sound professional.
It's like one of those things when you're listening to the radio and you hear someone's voice. I mean, for years, someone like Ken Bruce, for instance, one of the most wonderful voices in broadcast. And I built up a picture of what he looked like in my head. And then when I saw him, I thought, you look nothing. No. I mean, perfectly lovely looking chap. But it was not in any way what I imagined he was going to be. And we've had this conversation about characters in books. You build up a very clear picture of what someone looks like, and then when you actually see them, Alan Dedicate, who does the voiceover for
Voice of the Bulls,
the National Lottery in the UK, he's got this very particular voice. He looks nothing like his voice suggests. Unfortunately, we probably look exactly like our voices suggest.
We're talking about Ken Bruce. I was in a few years back now, probably getting over 10 years ago, in Marks and Spencer's in Milton Keynes.
I know it well.
Big up M&S. Waiting for my wife in one of the changing rooms, and she came out. What do you think of this? I went and had a look. I said, yeah, very nice. Went to sit back down on the chair I'd been sitting on, and there was some bloke sitting on it. I thought, charming, thank you very much. 5 seconds I've been stood up. Would you take my grave so quickly? I thought he looks sort of vaguely familiar. Maybe, I live near Milton Keynes. I thought maybe it's somebody I recognise from a pub or something like that. Didn't think much of it. And he stood up and he said, I'm not going to do a voice, but he said, oh, sorry, were you sitting here? And I thought, I know who you are now. Ken Bruce. Recognised the voice immediately.
Ken Bruce nicked my chair in M&S.
Yeah.
Well,
he's very pleasant about it.
He's a very pleasant man. He's a marvellous broadcaster. Yeah. BBC Radio 2 world listeners, if you're wondering who we're talking about, he does the one of the morning shows, not the breakfast one, the morning show on BBC Radio 2.
You don't have to get up quite so early for breakfast show.
No, you don't. But you still have to get up. And I'm actually sat in his studios, and not while he was in them. I was doing the arts programme on BBC Late Night with Penny Smith and was it the Claudia Winkleman? Anyway, one of those. I've done a couple, and I suddenly
dropping again.
You can't put it. I have to put it in place, And I suddenly realised that. I said, this studio, this is a broadcasting house. Well, it's not actually, it's in the house next door to broadcasting house. I said, so who records there? And Penny Smith said, this is the Ken Bruce studio. She said, you're sitting where Sally Traffic sits.
Ooh.
Not that she does anymore, because she's left the show now. She's, I think she's gone to Wales. Anyway, on to crime.
Did she take the M4? Because I heard that sometimes gets a bit congested after junction 12.
She took the B345 before entering the M25 and then taking the M4 turn off.
That's what I would have suggested as well, especially on a Friday afternoon.
To avoid congestion. Yeah, well, there we are. It's the first time we've had, albeit fictional traffic news on Partners in Crime.
And that's the American listeners well and truly alienated.
Right, let's kick off then. I've got a couple of book reviews to do in a second, which I'm looking forward to. But in the meantime, you saw the ABC Murders. We talked about this. We set up our television viewing for Christmas in the UK, and apparently you can be getting the ABC Murders, Hercule Poirot, on the case on Amazon Prime, I think. So hopefully people around the world, and some of you listeners out there, have tuned in and seen it already. Did you enjoy it?
I did, yeah. It's undoubtedly got some departures from the novel, as lots of TV series do for various reasons. But I did enjoy it. I thought it was very much of its time, but also brought bang up to date in other ways as well to make it relevant, but without being disingenuous to the time in which it was set, if that makes any sense at all. I really enjoyed it. I think lots of people remarked on the fact that the pace was slow. I mean, I didn't think it was. I wouldn't have called it slow. It wasn't, flash bang wallop. But then again, Agatha Christie's generally aren't. I enjoyed that kind of slightly more laid back pace. It never felt too slow to me.
No, it didn't to me.
And again, I don't mind a bit of slow TV. It's I think life is often far too fast paced. I really enjoyed it.
Well, I did too. I thought it was absolutely smashing. There was, and it has been pointed out by several people, an interesting plot hole, which was fairly obvious. And I remember thinking, goodness, this must be explained, but it wasn't. Oh. And then I thought,
is it something we can say on air?
No, I don't think so, because it is a bit of a spoiler. But this is the point I'm making: is that I went, okay, fine, let it go, because you're enjoying it all so brilliantly. It's a wonderful adaptation.
As a writer, you tend to be more forgiving when you see these things, because you know how easy it is to make those mistakes.
You do, but it also threw up the whole thing of how, I think, difficult it is to actually translate things to the screen. And Sarah Phelps is a brilliant adapter and writer in her own right. And I suddenly thought to myself, well, okay, I've enjoyed it all. I know, so one little thing like that, you just go, let it go, because it really doesn't matter, and it didn't matter. I mean, I've witnessed far worse on recent television crime shows where you just go, they can't possibly get away with that. That's they've cut to a car chase, and hopefully it's that Conjuring thing, isn't it? If you look over here, you're not going to see what we've just done over there. But it must give rise to it's very, very difficult. I mean, the art of adaptation or writing thrillers for the screen, I think, is very hard. And I'm not saying it isn't in books. It's a very, very difficult, as any crime writer, thriller writer will tell you, to get it right. But I think you've got a bit more space in a novel. You've got a bit more time. You still hit struggles. Simon Koenig was saying the other day, he said he'd been working on his new book and he'd hit this plot line where he just couldn't find a way out of it. And if he didn't actually deal with this one particular thing, the whole thing was actually going to be null and void. But again, you can sit back and you can take time and you can actually work around it. You can do it for a screenplay, of course you can. But anyway, it didn't, that one little thing, and I hate to criticise something that's so wonderful, and I'm not actually really doing that. It was just an observation of something, and it didn't stop me from absolutely loving John Malkovich and a fantastic cast. I mentioned last week Kevin McNally, Rupert Grint, and Andrew Buchan, who was terrific, or as you called him the other day, the guy from
the bloke off Broadchurch.
Broadchurch. I mean, he was just.
I wasn't wrong.
No, you weren't wrong. You were absolutely
I couldn't
right.
remember his name.
It's just not a name he tends to go by.
It's a bit of a long signature, isn't it?
It is a bit of a long signature, but he was absolutely marvellous. The whole thing is brilliant. So I hope anyone who's watched it out there, Partners in Crime listeners, have caught it and enjoyed it as much as the two of us obviously have. Right, I'm going on to my books now.
Go on.
My first recommendation of the week is Paper Ghosts by Julia Heaberlin. And here is the plot. Long ago, Carl Feldman was acquitted of murder. Now he lives alone in Texas with a few fading memories, until the day his daughter arrives and takes him away. Only she's not his daughter.
Ooh.
This woman is sure Carl's a murderer and that he's killed others, including her sister Rachel. Now they're visiting old crime scenes to see if Carl remembers any of it, to discover what happened to Rachel. Has Carl really forgotten what he did? Or is he only pretending? Has this young woman made a terrible mistake? Because if Carl really is a serial killer, she's in a very bad place. So there we are. This book has been recommended to me over the months. Sophie Hannah says, a beautifully written and extraordinary book. The Sunday Times, this book haunted me. The writing is beautiful and chilling, laced with subtle dark humour, and the multiple twists build to a perfect icy shiver of an ending. I loved it. That was C.J. Tudor in the Sunday Times. But basically, this character Carl has dementia.
Oh,
and
so he doesn't know it's not his daughter.
No,
right.
and they go on a road trip together. She, this woman
sends shivers down the spine, that doesn't it?
Yeah, and has he really got dementia? Is it a ploy to save him from punishment, or
it's almost a psychological thriller?
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, it's a wonderful premise for a book, and by the critical response to it, it's gone down. It's gone down rather well, Adam.
Well, that sounds good to me.
Paper Ghost by Julia Heaberlin, and where might one be able to get a copy of that?
I would strongly suggest getting it on Kobo.
Aha.
If you head over to kobo.com, check out Paper Ghosts by Julia Heaberlin, or any other book that we mentioned today, or any other book that takes your fancy. And if you're a first-time buyer from Kobo, just enter the promo code CRIME at the checkout and you'll get 90% off of your first ebook purchase from Kobo. And you don't even need one of their wonderful readers, which are very, very good. You can just download the free Kobo app to your tablet or phone and read there with 90% off of a book. How about that? Oh, it's about time they came out again, wasn't it?
I haven't done my whistle for months now. I've been saving. I've been keeping my powder dry, whistle-wise.
First one of 2019. On the subject of your recommendations, I do listen to them. When you last week read out the premise for Our House, by Louise
Cadlish.
That's the one. Just testing you. I thought that sounded really good. I bought it while you were reading out the synopsis.
You did. You were quick on the button.
And I finished it. I read it very quickly for me. So yeah, I finished Our House. Loved it.
Wow.
I thought it was absolutely brilliant, so uniquely done. The structure and the way that things are revealed throughout, and the twists and turns, absolutely loved it. And you also mentioned 7 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle.
Yes.
Which I've had recommended to me from numerous sources now. People have been badgering me to read it, and I started reading that last night. To say the opening of it is odd and mind-boggling would be an understatement, but
right.
it's
Yes,
also gripping in its own way. I'm not entirely sure where it's going.
Oh well,
or what's happening.
Hang on, because it takes you to places that most books don't. Well, certainly not in the crime thriller genre.
I mean, Macclesfield.
Well, actually, Darlington, I was thinking of, really.
Not far.
But
just across the Pennines.
Des Moines.
That's quite away from Darlington.
It is. You can get a bus. It's the 37B.
Right. Does that avoid the M4 at rush hour?
It certainly does.
Good.
Apart from, yeah. Here we go again.
I'm very much enjoying the read, though, actually. It's not often I say this, perhaps I should listen to you more often, because, yeah, that's two recommendations.
No, please don't do that.
That's 2 recommendations in a week, and they've both come up trumps. So, yeah, I mean, it's just nice to have had a Christmas period where I could have a couple of days off to read.
To actually do what you really enjoyed doing. Well, you were smiling at that recommendation for Paper Ghost by Julia.
But it's not often I can get through 2 books in a week, and you tend to recommend at least a couple each week. So.
I do. You have to keep up.
I've only done 1 and 2 chapters of the next book in a week, and that was with a fair amount of free time.
Well, I've got a reading list, and this is not one-upmanship. I've got a reading list of about 10 books to get through in the next month. which it's not a chore, is it? I mean,
is this for cover quotes and things?
It's, two are for cover quotes, yeah, and the others are for this and for I tend to read books that I'm attracted to, like yourself, and then if I like them, you can recommend them. It's no good recommending something that you don't know.
Are those new glasses, by the way?
Yes, they are. Well spotted.
Yeah, I was looking at them. I thought I've not seen those before. I like them.
Thank you very much indeed.
They're almost like a sort of a tiger printy or tortoise shell kind of effect to them.
Yeah, it's sort of a bit jazzy. My sister, my younger sister, whose finger is on the pulse for this sort of thing, took me into the Conran store, which I hadn't been in a Conran store. I didn't know there were many of them left, but there's a lovely Conran store in Marylebone High Street, and these are just readers.
Oh.
But she had a pair, and they're unisex, obviously. and I said, oh, they're really nice, and she bought them for me. She's a lovely girl.
Yeah.
And I can see, which is great. So anyway, moving on to my second book recommendation. The book is called Tangerine by Christine Mangum. It's described as if Donna Tartt, Gillian Flynn and Patricia Highsmith had collaborated in a screenplay to be filmed by Hitchcock, suspenseful and atmospheric. Well, there you are. That's a combination of people, and it's been recommended to me by many people. Again, coming up to Christmas, actually. It was published last year, and here is its conceit. The last person Alice Shipley expected to see since arriving in Tangier with her new husband was Lucy Mason. After the horrific accident at Bennington, the two friends, once inseparable roommates, haven't spoken in over a year. But Lucy is standing there trying to make things right. Perhaps Alice should be happy. She is not adjusted to life in Morocco, too afraid to venture out into the bustling Medinas and oppressive heat. Lucy, always fearless and independent, helps Alice emerge from her flat and explore the country. But soon a familiar feeling starts to overtake Alice. She feels controlled and stifled by Lucy at every turn. Then Alice's husband, John, goes missing, and Alice starts to question everything around her. Her relationship with her enigmatic friend, her decision to ever come to Tangier, and her very own state of mind. Tangerine is an extraordinary debut, so tightly wound, so evocative of 1950s Tangier, and so cleverly plotted that it will leave you absolutely breathless. Well, there we are. Vogue says, atmospheric. If the talented Mr. Ripley was recast with female leads and transplanted to Tangier, it might read a lot like Tangerine. Well, that's a pretty glowing recommendation. What have we got? Guardian says it's assured, atmospheric. Daily Mail, a plot as twisty as the streets of its dazzling Tangier setting, riveting, unputdownable Melissa Kasoulis in the Times.
It's a very Agatha Christie, Patricia Highsmith kind of setting, isn't it?
Yes, it is. Well, apparently it's, as it was described, it's a nail-biting thriller set in the 1950s Morocco, soon to be a major film starring Scarlett Johansson and produced by George Clooney. So there we are. So it's good enough to get adapted for the large screen, but that's been recommended to me. I have started reading that. I'm 3 chapters in and I'm absolutely hooked, and so it's I'm hoping that it holds the promise that these reviews and that conceit seems to suggest it will. Tangerine by Christine Mangum, available at kobo.com. Yes, so there we are.
I was just going to say, I've been, in order to just kind of steal some content and not have to generate our own, I've been browsing crimefictionlover.com again.
Oh, yes.
Brilliant website. And in the last few days, they've posted a couple of articles. They've 2 of their contributors have posted their top 5 books of 2018. And they've also looked at the most wanted books, most wanted crime books of 2019. So I was just going to run through a few of those. I know last week we looked at the female authors to watch out for in 2019. This is just a generalised list. So one of the contributors with the username Death Becomes Her gave their top 5 books of 2018 as Bleak Harbour by Brian Grewley, In a House of Lies by Ian Rankin, 13 by Steve Kavanagh.
Yes, we recommended both of those.
Which I read and loved. Dark Sacred Night by Michael Connolly, and The Colour of B. Larkham's Murder by Sarah J. Harris, which isn't a book I'd actually heard of. And looking at the cover, I probably would have walked past that because it doesn't look like a crimey cover, but there's quite a bit of that now where...
and isn't a bloke either.
Well, yes. I love the write-up of this. It's written from the point of view of this contributor here. Says, as soon as I finished this novel, I knew I'd found my book of the year. It's original, quirky and downright clever and had me in its thrall right from the start. 13-year-old Jasper lives with his dad in a London suburb. He has synesthesia, so where you and I would hear sounds, Jasper hears colours. He's also face blind, so doesn't recognise people unless they speak to him, and he identifies the colour of their voices. Jasper is a solitary child who loves to paint and watch the parakeets that nest in the trees of next door's garden. Then B. Larkham moves in next door and everything changes. Jasper sees her as an exciting new friend, but others see B somewhat differently, and her arrival causes friction in the neighbourhood. Then she is killed, and it is clear Jasper knows something, but what can it be? Ooh. Sounds quite curious incident-y.
It does. Sarah J. Harris.
Yeah, The Colour of B. Larkham's Murder.
Great cover as well.
Yeah, and it also appealed to me because of the synesthesia thing, which is something I have. Not the same type where you see sounds as colours. That is quite a common type of it. But for example, when letters or numbers are mentioned, I visualise them in a kind of a visual space. It's quite hard to describe, but it does help with things like maths because you can kind of see the relationship between numbers because I can visualise them in a visual plane. It's a very odd thing, but just thought I'd slip that in.
Yeah, well, I didn't realise you had that. So
No.
if I said this book's $8.99, you see the $8.99 immediately, and you take it.
I can see it in relation to other numbers. So, I can get an idea of how much. I mean, I know anyone can by doing the maths, but the relationship between numbers.
Would you have been a very successful accountant?
No, I was actually not particularly good at maths. It just doesn't interest me.
Oh, that's interesting.
I went down the words route instead.
Well, that's new to me, but that sounds absolutely terrific. That sounds like a great read.
Yeah, and the other top 5, by the way, were Good Samaritans by Will Carver, 8 Million Ways to Die by Lawrence Block and John K. Snyder III, Tapping the Source by Kem Nunn, Newcomer by Keigo Higashino, and This Is How It Ends by Eva Dolan.
Eva Dolan, yes.
So, I had a great 10 books there for last year, and just to let you know what the ones that they recommended for 2019, these are apparently the most eagerly awaited and looked forward to books of 2019. According to crimefictionlover.com, Nemesis by Rory Clements, The Border by Don Winslow, A Friend is a Gift You Give Yourself by William Boyle, Metropolis by Philip Kerr, A Bloody Business by Dylan Struzan, A Shadow Intelligence by Oliver Harris, Worst Case Scenario by Helen Fitzgerald, This Storm by James Elroy, The Knife by Joe Nesbo, and Death in the East by Abir Mukherjee, and I know that's not 5.
But did you visualise that number in relation to the other numbers you've mentioned?
No. The article that was in was mentioning the fact that history and throwbacks are things that are apparently going to dominate crime fiction in 2019.
History and well, that's good because my new books are historical and throwbacks.
Yeah, I remember having a chat with my agent about a year ago about this, and she said the same thing. They're looking very much at the cosy kind of the throwback golden age type books, and I thought, well, that's good because I've got my Kempston Hardwick series is a bit like that, and it's not had a new book in 4 years, but I'm currently about a quarter of the way through another Kempston Hardwick book, which I'm currently writing. It's
fantastic.
It's brilliant being able to revisit those characters after 4 years. Yeah, it's like meeting old friends again. But yeah, they're set in the modern day. Yeah. But he's very much a throwback, and it's very much in that golden age Agatha Christie kind of style. So
I love it.
Yeah, fingers crossed I might hit the zeitgeist.
Well, again.
Well,
quite right. Well,
unfortunately, you've got to keep doing it.
You've got to keep hitting that height. Yes. My career is a series of lucky breaks, as Walter Matthau said. No, I said
yes. There's
like
another similar one. That's the harder I work, the luckier I get, or something, something
yes.
along those lines.
Well, all very true, of course. Right, I've got a shout out now because I mentioned that I would last week, and that is for Peter James's new play, which I described as The House on Ghost Hill, and I was, of course, totally wrong. It is, as everyone knows, The House on Coal Hill. Again, this is another collaboration with the stage adapter Sean McKenna, directed by Ian Talbot, the wonderful Ian Talbot, and produced by Josh Andrews, who is a leading producer in the West End and throughout the country, and is the son of Anthony Andrews of Brideshead Revisited fame. Point of interest there. Anyway, so it's following the overwhelming sellout stage success of The Perfect Murder, Dead Simple, and Not Dead Enough. Peter James is back with his spine-tickling smash-hit play The House on Coal Hill. Within days of moving into the huge, dilapidated Georgian mansion in the remote Sussex countryside, the Harcourt family quickly realise that they aren't the only residents at Coal Hill. The House on Coal Hill UK tour is a modern-day ghostly thriller that will send shivers down your spine and make you think twice about returning home to a dark, empty house after the show. The House on Coal Hill UK tour will star my chum Joe McFadden, the wonderful actor known for Heartbeat and Holby City, and more recently winning Strictly Come Dancing in the UK, and also Rita Simons, who plays Caro Harcourt. Rita, of course, of EastEnders fame, and more recently, I'm a Celebrity, Get Me Out of Here. So that's going out very soon. Peter says, it's been a great thrill for me to have 3 stage adaptations of my work, so cleverly written and brilliantly performed over the last 5 years. By cleverly written, he means the adaptation by Sean McKenna of Peter's original work. And a joy to see the huge pleasure they've given audiences around the UK and overseas. I know that for a fact because I appeared in The Perfect Murder a couple of years ago. I'm very excited by the latest adaptation of my best-selling ghost story, The House on Coal Hill, which starts on a 6-month nationwide tour next January. Well, we're in January now. That's happening now. In fact, I know they're in rehearsals. I've seen pictures of them. The intimacy of theatres is particularly well suited to instilling a great atmosphere of suspense and thrills in audiences, and I can promise there will be no shortage of both with the stage production of The House on Coal Hill. So this UK tour opens on the 23rd of January at the Orchard, Dartford. It's going to be playing Nottingham, Shrewsbury, Coventry, Malvern, Portsmouth, Brighton, Norwich, Newcastle, Hull. Where else is it going? Southend, yes, where I come from, Richmond Theatre, Milton Keynes, New Victoria, Woking, Leeds Grand Theatre, Alexandra, Birmingham, Opera House Manchester, Cambridge Arts, Theatre Royal Glasgow, and finally Cheltenham, the Everyman Theatre Cheltenham, where by chance I happen to be going tomorrow.
Oh yeah, I love that theatre. It's very nice,
beautiful theatre. So yes, I mean that's a long tour. So for people in the UK, obviously, who are interested and are lovers of Peter's work, this is the first theatre adaptation that is not a Roy Grace. So it's moving into slightly new territory for Peter and the team, and I wish them well and very much look forward to seeing it. So if you're interested, grab a ticket while you can.
Should we go and see it?
Why don't we?
Should we do a Partners in Crime outing? We can take the recording gear and
oh, that's a good idea.
do a little Partners in Crime jaunt.
Milton Keynes. Are they playing?
Yes.
Did I say Milton
Yes,
Keynes? I did,
they are. Yeah, in April.
Well, there we are. So that's what we'll do. So that sounds very exciting, and of course it follows Ian Rankin's play and whatever. And this I bring this up regularly on Partners in Crime, talking to guests and authors. There seems to be a dearth of the crime thriller on stage these days. It's out of fashion, certainly in the West End, and I should imagine on Broadway and various other things. They're very few. Of course, there's the Mousetrap, which has been in the West End since 1952, I think it is, and very little else. The only other thriller I can really think of is the ghostly Woman in Black, which is long running in the West End. And
there are ones that have come and gone and done very well. Sleuth Booth, for example.
Yeah, but
Business and Murder,
many years ago. I mean, Business and Murder ran for 9 years by Richard Harris, a very successful play. But that came off, I think, it was probably something in the region of 20 years ago.
Yeah.
It's still,
they're not in mousetrap territory.
No, and it's not. I think it's a combination of things that when people go to the West End, certainly, that's why there's so many musicals. People tend to think that they'll pay a bit more and get more bang for their bucks, and so the straight play, as it's known or whatever, does struggle. So, but it's also on tour. You get them on tour. Bill Kenwright has his classic thriller theatre company. They're going out with the Lady Vanishes with Juliet Mills. That's rehearsing now. That'll be out in January, and obviously Josh is taking out Peter's house on Cold Hill. They still exist on the commercial tour, but they're not done very often these days, and I think it's a shame because it's obviously television it's one of television's main success areas. Through the crime thriller across the world, from The Bridge to countless shows in America and over here with Unforgotten and Luther and all the rest of the police procedural is very, very popular, but very hard to catch a play on the stage. I wonder why. If anyone out there has got any thoughts as to why this is,
But when they go on, they do quite well.
Well, they tend to do very well, but they're not really tolerated in the major cities, and there'll be very good reasons. I'm sure some people will just say it's not art, it's not craft, and very much some of the prejudices that people have about the genre in literature as well.
But it still doesn't stop it being the most read genre in the world.
Exactly.
So
exactly, which is our point. So yes, so it's something that sort of stays with me. I'm sure there's the possibility of a big revival of certain plays, and with the huge number of talented writers, established and up and coming, with their books, you'd think there was an extraordinary amount of material that could be adapted to the stage. We talked to David Mark last year, and I think he's got one of his plays coming up in Yorkshire, and he's following that. So that's great to hear. Val McDermid was mentioning that one of her books was optioned for a stage play, so that may be happening soon. So I'm sure it is happening. The green shoots are there, and maybe as a genre it's returning to popularity. But I'd like to see more thrillers, genuine scary thrillers, whodunits or whatever, available to see on the British stage.
Maybe we'll have to write one.
What an excellent idea. And on that thought, it's now 36 minutes 9 seconds into this podcast.
Minus the theme tune.
Oh gosh, yes. So I suppose we're ready to wind up now, aren't we?
Yes, we're going to have a cup of tea and talk about our stage thriller.
Yeah, that's a very good idea. What should we call it?
I don't know. Answers on the postcard, please.
Yeah, that's a good idea. Yes, that's a fantastic idea. If you've got any ideas for a stage play that the two of us could actually scribble, send them in.
And co-starring, of course.
And co-star, yes.
Yeah, write the theme tune, sing the theme tune.
What, like Dennis Waterman in Minder?
Exactly.
Yes, I think I'll pass on that one. Ha 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 ha.
Partners in Crime was presented by Adam Croft and Robert Dawes and produced by Adam Croft. The theme tune was by the Caesareans. The Partners in Crime logo and imagery were designed by Stuart Beisch. Partners in Crime is sponsored by Kobo, your favourite local bookshop, perfected.